Well, happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope you're having a great start to the day. Josh Rugger here in studio to provide the latest severe weather information. Of course, we've got strong to severe thunderstorms that are possible late this evening into the overnight hours tonight. We just got the latest day one convective outlook in from the Storm Prediction Center was updated just a few moments ago. So we're going to have all the latest details for you right here. We're going to let you know about everything. Of course, Dan Scoff and the rest of the Weather Authority team will be here later on this evening, providing updates as those storms are developing. But wanted to give you one this morning as well, just to give you the latest details, because I know a lot of people might have questions out there, maybe want to see the latest future track, want to see our latest thinking on this. So we're going to get right to it. But let's see here. Got a few comments right now. Looks like Frankie's on here right now. Thank you for keeping us informed. Frankie, thank you so much for joining this morning. Brian on here. What's up, my friend? Love that picture of the hurricane as well. That's a beautiful looking storm right there. Richard asking, where's Dan Richard? He's going to be coming in later on this evening. So he'll be here. He's got to get some rest. I mean, he can't be here 24/7, 365, though. I'm sure he could if need be, because that man, he can go forever. So he'll be here later on this evening, as will the rest of the weather team. Looks like the worst is getting close to Fayetteville. So, yeah, Timmy, so you're talking about the latest day one outlook. We'll look at that in just a few moments, but the enhanced risk has expanded a little bit. So let's go ahead and get right to things right now. First of all, let's take a look at our Garfield Posey Mountain Weatherbug Network camera. Beautiful scene right there. Colors quite muted. You don't need us to tell you that. It's been so dry over the last several weeks, last several months. Definitely impacted the fall foliage and all the wind that we've seen. Over the last 24 to 48 hours has really done a number on that foliage. But temperatures right now, way above what the model said. And this is why you've always got to consider that when it comes to severe weather forecasting, because a lot of times the models can struggle out ahead of these cold fronts. And right now we're sitting at 78 degrees in Fayetteville, 75 in Rogers, 73 in Harrison, 77 in Grove, 81 in Sallisaw, and 79 in Fort Smith. So definitely a little bit warmer than what the models are showing, and that makes you wonder if the instability that it's forecasting is really correct. So we're going to have to watch those trends very, very closely. But already got some cumulus moving through the area at this time, and not a whole lot of a cap to speak of either. That's not really going to be a big concern with this storm system. But right now, as you can see on radar, there's the high cloudiness starting to move through. There's that cumulus field that's starting to develop out to our west. So starting to see the very, very, very early stages of a severe weather situation over the midsection of the country. Now, here's the deal. Still got a lot of things to consider. One of the things that I am most concerned about with this system, at least in terms of the extent of the severe weather potential, is storm mode. What do I mean by storm mode? Well, I mean, what kind of storms are developing with this system? Sometimes the upper level energy can lag behind a little bit, and that can cause these storms to become linear as we move throughout the evening. And look at all these storms that are developing right now in southern Kansas. You see how they're kind of messy right now? There's a lot of storm development going on, and that's because there's not a whole lot of a cap right now. And so when there's not a whole lot of a cap, these storms take off really quickly, they overrun themselves, and they produce more of a wind threat rather than a tornado threat. Now, that will probably change as we move throughout the rest of the day today. It's very early, right? These are some initial showers, storms, but it's things to consider as we move throughout the rest of the day today, especially in this area right here where the tornado potential is a little bit greater. I know we want to focus on Northwest Arkansas, but what happens out west is very important to our severe weather setup as well, because we got to see what kind of storms are developing along the system. We got to see how the upper level energy is evolving, the position of the front, the position of that upper level energy, because that does make a big difference in terms of the types of storms that we see. So I already got the troll that's joined in here. I see him. So that's absolutely fantastic. But we're not going to focus on that right now. We're going to focus on what's going on in Northwest Arkansas and the River Valley. But again, dew points right now really starting to rise at this time. Earlier this morning, we were in the middle to upper 50s in terms of the dew points. Now that deeper low-level moisture is starting to surge off to the north right now. So dew points are in the low to middle 60s in Northwest Arkansas, middle to upper 60s in portions of Texas. But look at that plume of moisture. I mean, all the way up in Kansas City, Wichita, Oklahoma City. So moisture, not really a concern with this system either. That's not really a limiting factor. This will get the job done, especially this time of year. And Kinsey said it best. The wind in Springdale is crazy. My car is shaking. And Kinsey, we've experienced it over the last few days. You've seen how strong those winds are as you step outside, right? There's clearly a lot of energy to work with right now. So This is why we are going to be looking at the storms at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and block this person right here. Hold on. I'm going to see how I can block somebody. Just give me a few seconds right now, because I just can't deal with, I know a lot of people are certainly keeping a close eye on the situation and stuff like that, but I just can't have somebody filling up the comment section with some garbage right now. So anyway, we're going to go to the SPC Day 1 Outlook here. This is, of course, the latest Day 1 Outlook. And you can see here that the greatest severe weather risk remains off to our north and west. So that's that level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk of severe weather that we've been talking about. And again, it's still off to the north and west of our weather coverage area at this time. It may extend into northwest Arkansas as we move throughout the rest of the day today. But this is the latest outlook that just came out. So we have a level 2 out of 5, slight risk of severe weather for most of the weather coverage area. There is a level 1 out of 5, a level 1 out of 5 marginal risk that's clipping eastern portions of the area. You can see that enhanced risk clipping northwestern Delaware County as well. So nothing really has changed in terms of the risk, but you can see that enhanced risk has expanded just a little bit more. So that is something to watch very, very closely right there. And we're going to be keeping a close eye on that. But main time frame remains the same, mainly between about 8 p.m. this evening through early tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock a.m. So right in between those times right there. So we're going to be watching that very, very closely. All modes of severe weather possible, including damaging winds, large hail, and that low-end tornado threat. Again, it's not really the tornado threat that's the main concern right now. It's damaging winds, but it does exist with this storm system, and it has expanded a little bit more as well. You can see that, at least according to our tornado risk map, we're in the low threat for tornadoes for most counties along and west of the I-49 corridor. Very low threat in eastern portions of our weather coverage area. But again, you can't get too caught up in the risk, right? Everybody has the potential for tornadoes tonight. Now, it's not a high-end threat. It's certainly not what we saw on May 26th. The highest risk remains off to our north and west for sure, but still something we got to watch very closely, especially with these QLCS-type setups, right? These quasi-linear convective systems. You hear us talk about that all the time. Those lines of showers and storms that move through the area, those can have embedded supercells within them. Those can rotate as well. We always look for nudgers. We always look for confidence builders when it comes to forecasting those, because a lot of times they are very difficult to warn. They are very, very difficult to warn. You have to keep an eye on them because they can start rotating rapidly, drop a tornado, and 5 minutes later, it's gone on radar. So it's definitely something we're going to be watching very closely. And this is why you need multiple ways to receive warnings as we move throughout the overnight hours tonight into early tomorrow morning. So that's the tornado potential. But of course, the damaging wind risk is the highest with this particular storm system. You can see that yellow shaded area right there, pretty much encompassing the entire coverage area in terms of damaging wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour. Even a higher end threat starting to clip northwest Delaware County at this time in Oklahoma. But again, damaging winds the main concern. We could also see large hail up to about quarter or half size. Large hail is not going to be it's not going to be a big concern with this system, but still got to watch out for some of those isolated supercells. And then, of course, there's that tornado potential that I just talked about. A few possible, and the farther west you go, the more favorable that environment is for tornadoes. Why is that? Well, it's because of this plume of instability that we're going to be working with. Now, here's the deal about the fall. I got to mention this right now about the fall, right? You're not going to see crazy instability this time of year, right? You're typically not going to see instability getting to that 3,000, 4,000 joules per kilogram range. I know a lot of folks maybe know what that is out there, but some of you may be new to our weather live streams. Basically, instability is the fuel that's required for shower and storm development, and for showers and storms to maintain their strength as they're moving through the atmosphere. And so during the fall, instability is not as high because we don't see, warm temperatures, right? We don't get into that 80-degree range. We don't see dew points in the 70s typically this time of year. But what we do see is an enhancement of the jet stream as well. We get faster wind shear, and it's definitely something that we've got to watch very closely. We get what we call low instability, high wind shear environments. So this is what I mean by that. Look at the instability. It's there. As long as instability is there, we're going to have the potential for severe weather. But one thing you got to watch as we move throughout the evening is this shrinking of the instability, right? It's going to be a thin plume of instability as the system sags off to the south and east. So this is why the farther west you go, the more likely you are to run into severe weather potential, because as we move throughout the overnight hours tonight that instability starts dropping off in far eastern portions of our weather coverage area, which is why the severe weather potential will also taper off as we move throughout the early morning hours tomorrow. But we've got it in place, right? That's pretty much what we look for. If we've got even a little bit of instability, right? As Brendan says, even if we have a little bit of instability in the fall, it can cause big problems because we've got a lot of wind shear to deal with right now. And this actually can kind of measure that. This is what we call the Energy Helicity Index. This is kind of showing the spin in the atmosphere. And look at those colors that are popping up on there. You got those yellows, oranges, purples, especially off to the west of our area. Again, it's going to be enhanced the farther west you go. But much like instability, that's also going to be a thin plume as it surges off to the east. I mean, look at that. We're talking about quite a bit of spin in the atmosphere, quite a bit of wind shear going on here in northwest Arkansas and the River Valley. So we do need to keep a close eye on this, especially along and west of the I-49 corridor. That's where my greatest concern is at this time in terms of rotating thunderstorms, even in the River Valley as well on the I-40 corridor, right around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Again, these storms are coming through likely as you are sleeping. So I promise I'm going to get to some questions here in just a minute because I know a lot of folks have questions, but I just want to kind of to show you what we're looking at right now in terms of the forecast to kind of give you an idea of why that severe weather risk is what it is right now, why it gets a little bit lower the farther east you go, and kind of the uncertainties that are going on as well, because we're still under a slight risk. And the reason we're under a slight risk at this time is because of these uncertainties. So we're going to be watching all this very closely, but regardless, you got to make sure you're staying weather aware as we move throughout the overnight hours tonight. So that's kind of the ingredients that we're watching right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at future track. Let's take a look at the latest future track right now to kind of give you an idea of timing. So I still think a few isolated thunderstorms can't be ruled out this afternoon into the evening, but the more I look at it, the less likely that will come to fruition. And my hope is that we could maybe get some thunderstorms between like 2 to 8 o'clock p.m., not widespread, but they kind of enhance the cumulus field. They kind of enhance that cloud cover and maybe lower the instability a little bit. Right now, I don't know if that's going to be the case. We'll watch it very closely and keep our fingers crossed. There is quite a bit of development already going out in Kansas right now, so that is something to watch there. But there's that line of showers and storms developing off to our north and west. Southerly winds also very, very gusty as we move throughout the evening. But look at that line. Pretty nasty here on future track. Now, some of the models have tried to pop up little isolated storms out ahead of this line. We'll see if those materialize. If they do, these would pose a greater risk for tornadoes. Obviously, this model is not really showing an impressive cell at this time, but it is something to watch. And of course, we are going to be watching these storms very closely as they move through the area for those embedded supercells, those embedded areas of rotation, right? Because they could pop up out of nowhere. You have to watch the radar like a hawk. So that is something we're going to be keeping a close eye on, especially in far northwestern Arkansas, just kind of looking at these QLCS setups. If this storm can stay line normal or shear dominant, meaning that it's really tapping into the wind shear in terms of the storm motion, it's taking a favorable track for these storms to start rotating, then we could be talking about QLCS tornado potential. So it is something that we are concerned about and watching very closely with this system, and they are a challenge to warn. But 2 o'clock a.m., that's what this particular model is showing. Again, I think after midnight, I think is going to be the sweet spot for shower and storm development. So a very loud night expected. These are going to be highly electrified storms. Very heavy rainfall as well. But I know a lot of folks may be wondering about flooding. Because this system is moving through quite quickly, it should be out of the area by 6 to 7 o'clock. I'm not ruling out isolated flooding, but it's not a big concern right now unless we get a ton of training thunderstorms. And we could get some stratiform rain as well on the backside of the system, which stratiform rain is really difficult for the models to pick up on. Sometimes you can see some heavy rain wrap around the system. That can cause flooding. So it is something to watch very closely. I will say the rainfall rates will be pretty hefty with the system. And of course, by the time we get to the evening, we should be good to go. Trick-or-treat plans, no issues at all, but make sure the kiddos have the jacket because temperatures will be dropping off very quickly. So here's a look at the 24-hour precipitation forecast, and then we'll get to questions right now. 20% chance of rain throughout the afternoon. After sunset, those rain chances really ramp up. 90% chance of showers and storms after midnight, and then starting to taper off as we move throughout the rest of the morning hours in northwest Arkansas. So again, we'll have more updates as we move throughout the rest of the day today. You don't want to miss any of those. You can download the Weather Authority app if you haven't already. You can find that on the Google Play and Apple App Store. Of course, you can also scan the QR code if you're watching on your computer at this time. But again, folks, a lot of factors at play here. it's been a while since we've had a severe weather risk in Northwest Arkansas. And I know a lot of folks obviously thinking about May 26th. This is not that type of setup, but it is important to have multiple ways to receive warnings, including the Weather Authority app, including a weather radio, and also just making sure that you realize that sirens are not enough, right? I saw somebody made a comment about that. I'm going to try to find it again because they had a great comment about tornado sirens, but tornado sirens are not going to be enough when it comes to waking you up when severe weather strikes our area. So that's basically what we're looking at right now. I'm going to go ahead and take people's questions at this time, but I appreciate everybody joining in right now, and hopefully I've kind of given you at least the base level information. If you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer those. I'll be on for the next 15 to 20 minutes. So just going to kind of go back to the top here and take a look at this. Stephen asking, will the temps give it more energy? So this is a good, this is something that we always talk about, right, Stephen? Sometimes the models can underdo the temps, right? If they underdo the temps, what does that mean? That means more instability than what the models are showing. So certainly something to keep an eye on right there. Temperatures already above what the models were forecasting. We're already sitting at 78 degrees in Fayetteville. So a little bit more time for things to warm up as well. So that is something to watch very closely. Do you think this will be a good evening at 7 p.m. to go for a walk around the neighborhood? Nikita, I think you should be fine at 7 o'clock p.m. Keep an eye on the radar. I think the majority of the storms are going to be after that, but I still can't rule out some isolated storm development. So about a 20, 30% chance of rain around 7 p.m., Nikita. Just keep an eye on the radar. Tune into KNWA at 6 o'clock p.m. Dan will have that forecast there and let you know what's going on. I think 7 o'clock to me right now will be fine. I think it's going to be more like after 9 o'clock p.m. So good question right there. Let's see here. I like how we don't have rain all this time, only to get crazy storms because Arkansas. Here's the deal, Corey. I talked about this on air several weeks ago with Perry. I said, look, it's not storming right now. Probably not going to storm over the next couple of weeks. But when it does storm again, I am going to say with about 99% confidence, there's going to be a heavy rain threat and there's going to be a severe weather threat because the atmosphere always balances itself out. It's a fluid, after all. It's a fluid, and it's going to balance itself out eventually. We get to this time of year, you get these big dips in the jet stream. The jet stream's enhanced during the fall. These low instability type setups or lower instability. I mean, I think the instability is still pretty high end for late October, truth be told. Yeah, it always happens. It always happens. But thankfully, it's not happening during trick-or-treating. I'm thankful for that. I'm glad the kiddos are going to have a nice and dry Halloween and everything. Just hope we can get out of the system without any damage or anything like that. I mean, Bradley said it best right here. Low-level jet's been cranking all morning. They have been ripping over the last couple of days, Bradley. I mean, there's a lot of energy coming in right now. I mean, you could see, you step outside the last couple of days, and whew, it is just booking it out there. So you're exactly right about all those things. Low-level jet definitely going to be strong tonight too. Of course, the low-level jet gets enhanced during the nighttime hours. So that is something to watch right there for severe weather potential. Let's see here. Looking for some more questions. So Arnold, my neighborhood in Rogers is still having to clean up from the last tornado. It's crazy, Arnold. And we talked about that too. After those tornadoes came through on May 26th, it wasn't just going to be a month or two to recover. I mean, we said it was going to be months, maybe even years for some communities to completely recover. And it's unbelievable what that storm system caused. It's something I'm never going to forget. I know a lot of folks are never going to forget. Just a historic sort of severe weather outbreak for our area. I mean, you had the largest tornado in Arkansas history. It was just unbelievable, that storm system right there. So definitely praying for you guys, Arnold, and pray for everybody else that are still cleaning up from that system. Again, it's just it was tough because I've lived up here. I mean, I've lived in Arkansas my whole life. I was born in North Little Rock, lived in Hot Springs, lived in Harrison, moved up to Northwest Arkansas in 2013 with my family. It was pretty tough to see a lot of that damage in Decatur when I was out there storm spotting and seeing that anticyclonic tornado. I mean, that's still engraved in my mind right now. So Arnold, definitely praying for y'all right now and hoping that cleanup can continue to go well and hoping that we don't see additional destructive thunderstorms tonight. Again, this is not a setup like May 26th. far from it, but still a severe weather event that we've got to watch. And we'll be here every step of the way, keeping y'all safe. I can promise you that. There's that comment I was looking for. Good comment by Steven. Do not depend on outdoor sirens. Again, he said it best right there. It's not enough. It's not enough, folks. Yeah, exactly, Brian. It's all about storm mode, really, with this system. And again, I'm already looking at what's going on in Kansas right now. These storms are kind of messy, but it's early. It's 12 o'clock p.m., right? They're messy right now, but they can also leave behind boundaries and other features that can enhance storms. Boundaries can also weaken storms. There's not a fine line there. There's not a set point when it comes to those boundaries sometimes. So, Trey, so the winds be coming back. So not right now, but there is potential for that to happen. A lot of the models were showing that yesterday. A lot of the models are still showing that this morning. You got those back surface winds. Then you talk about an enhancement of that QLCS tornado potential. So it is something we're going to be watching. I mean, mesoanalysis, that's going to be the name of the game today. I do have the mesoanalysis page pulled up right now just in case folks want to get into it. Right now, there's not really a whole lot going on, but as we move throughout the future, that will change. So we'll be watching that very, very closely. I'm sure when Dan gets in later on this afternoon and does a weather live stream, he's going to be talking about it and breaking things down. But good question right there. We'll be watching it because if it does, it's all bets are off because then that enhances your tornado potential, at least locally. Exactly. Then this is why the severe weather risk is higher off to our north and west. This upper level energy, positively tilted trough, it can lag behind sometimes. And when it lags behind, sometimes these storms can cause what we refer to as anvil seeding. So basically, and I'm going to go full screen here so you can kind of see my hands. So basically, think of like a storm, right? A storm's developing. You've got this anvil that's forming. And what's going on is because we don't have any upper level support, right? These storms are not able to really maintain their strength, right? They're going to be developing and then falling apart and then developing and falling apart. And when they fall apart, right? Well, you see that storm kind of shrink and get sheared apart. And then you see these anvils start extending out like this. So you've got storms that are trying to develop, but as they're trying to develop, they've got an anvil that's moving over them, and that kind of limits their growth. It kind of stunts their growth until the upper level support comes, because when the upper level supports come, they can maintain their strength, they can grow, and they can become tornadic or they can become severe. But the upper level support is very important. You have to watch that very closely. And positively tilted troughs typically mean that the energy is going to be lagging a little bit. It's slower. Negatively tilted trough, right? I mean, you think of positive, right? You're going up the hill. It's harder to go up the hill, right? Whereas with the negatively tilted trough, you're going down the hill, and you get faster and faster and faster. With those negatively tilted troughs, those systems are moving a little bit quicker. So that is something to watch very closely right there. But good point right there by Bradley on why the severe weather risk is a little bit higher off to our north and west. It's just because the energy is going to be there quicker. And the question for us is it going to arrive right on time? Let's see here. Gonna be a long night. That's for sure, Arnold. We're gonna be watching it very closely. Since it's dry, will lightning cause fire? So this is a good question because I know a lot of folks are wondering about that. So typically with lightning and fires, Kinsey, right? It's more so if you have what we call dry thunderstorms. The definition of a dry thunderstorm is basically a storm that's producing lightning that has rainfall rates typically like of a few hundredths of an inch at most, right? So you're seeing lightning strikes, right? But the storm's not very big, right? It doesn't have a whole lot of precipitation associated with it. These storms are not going to have that issue. We're going to have a ton of rain when these storms are moving through. So, in terms of fires, I know a lot of people are concerned about that because we have that extreme fire danger. We've had fires, and unfortunately, I heard about what happened in Greenwood as well. That is horrible what happened in Greenwood. And I don't know if folks know this, but there was a fire that occurred in Greenwood earlier this morning. Unfortunately, 3 people passed away in the fire, including a football player at Greenwood. And we are just heartbreaking to hear. It's heartbreaking to hear We were, and again, this is why we always say with the fire weather, right? It just takes one little spark. And unfortunately, some people lost their lives this morning with those fires in Greenwood. So just keep that community in your prayers today. I can't even imagine the pain of going through that and everything for those families. But just be thinking of the Greenwood community right now, because that was just horrifying to hear. I mean, I was eating breakfast and then I finally saw the message from Greenwood. I couldn't believe what I was seeing right there. So just again, keep those folks in your prayers this afternoon in Greenwood because of that fire. But with this situation, Kinsey, we're not going to be talking about fires just because these storms will have a little bit more precipitation with them. But that's a very good question. I know a lot of folks were probably thinking about that. Brendan asking, even though the environment isn't the same as May 26th, can the same thing happen? So the thing about May 26th, Brendan, is that what we saw in Northwest Arkansas was supercells. And they were isolated supercells, right? And what I mean by that is we're not talking about a big line of showers and storms moving through the area. That's a QLCS. That's a quasi-linear convective system, which is what we typically see in Northwest Arkansas. Those are embedded supercells. So with the May 26th storm and the isolated supercell situation, because that storm kind of has its own energy, right? It's got all that instability to work with. It's kind of by itself. It may be getting nudged by other storms, right? But it's tapping into the environment by itself, causing those wide destructive tornadoes, right? These kind of storms that are moving through the area have it's more of a spin up, right? So you see spin up for like 5 minutes and then it kind of goes away. So in terms of like long track tornadoes like we saw on May 26th, unlikely, very unlikely to happen. This is a different setup. Having said that, there still could be tornado potential. So that's why we have to watch it very closely. But in terms of a far-reaching tornado outbreak like what we saw on May 26th, that is extremely unlikely. You never want to say it's not ever going to happen, but this is not the type of system to do something like that. It would be stunning if it did, and I don't think it will. This is more of a damaging wind event with embedded areas of rotation that can drop tornadoes, but they're typically, not always, but typically brief. I'm not going to say weak, though, because there's nothing weak about a tornado, and I don't like that term brief and weak. Yes, most of the time they're brief. I wouldn't say most of the time they're weak, because as we saw with that Rogers tornado a couple years ago, excuse me, not the Rogers tornado, the Springdale tornado, that was not weak. So again, brief, they generally err on the side of brief, and these spin-ups are a little bit more sporadic than what we saw on May 26th. All right, let's see here. Today they will finish all the restoration work from May 26th. So where was that located, Scott? Is that in Rogers? I'm interested to know about that. But I'm very happy to hear that. I'm very happy to hear that. Again, this community, it means a lot to me, and I'm just happy to hear that that things are going to be getting better there with that restoration. That progress is going well. Let's see. Do you think our weather radio will go off and the wind is blowing like crazy and the basketball goal is rocking? So your weather radio will wake you up as long as you. Now there could be a setting on your weather radio. Just make sure you're aware of this. I know there is some weather radios that have this, that have like alarm or something like that on the side that says off or on. Make sure that's on, right? So that way it can start beeping and stuff like that. I mean, we have a weather radio over here that just goes nuts every time we get a severe thunderstorm warning or tornado warning, right? So make sure that setting's on. Make sure the sound's up, obviously, and you should be good to go if the warning is issued for your county. But that's a good question right there. Very good question. Hey, Josh, what does Saturday look like for Silver Dollar City's opening for Christmas? Scott, you are speaking my language right now. So here's the deal. Silver Dollar City, love the place, love Christmas. Saturday may not be the best day. I'm not going to be honest with you. Now, in the morning, it should be fine. But as we move throughout Saturday, especially late afternoon, evening hours, those rain chances are really going to start bumping up. Speaking of which, Razorbacks on Saturday, I think, should be fine. Kickoff at 11 o'clock. Obviously, things can change, but I think the bulk of the shower and storm activity will be during the afternoon after the game ends. In terms of Silver Dollar City, Saturday, I mean, I think the bulk of the shower and storm activity is going to stay away from Branson during the morning and early afternoon, but that may be a different story as we head towards the late afternoon, early evening, which is obviously the time you want to go to Silver Dollar City to see the lights. So, Scott, this weekend may not be the best for Silver Dollar City, but it will get better as we move throughout the coming weeks, hopefully. But good question right there, because I want to go out there multiple times to see the lights at Silver Dollar City. That's my favorite place right there. Let's see here. Just came in. How's Northwest Arkansas looking for late tonight? So here you go. Michael, I'll show another future track for folks that are just joining us right now. So again, you'll see here a lot of the showers and storms moving through during the overnight hours, Michael, right around 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, continuing through about 5 to 6 o'clock before shifting off to the east of the area. It's going to be a quick moving line of storms. It's not sticking around a long time. So we'll watch that very closely. Sirens aren't designed to alert you inside, especially when it's asleep. They can also fail. They went out when the Rogers tornado hit. Great comment right there. And sometimes they don't even go off at all. I know that for a fact. Let's see here. Just logged in. Do you think the enhanced can hit into Bella Vista? We'll see, Debbie. We'll see. Obviously, the latest update came out just a few moments ago, so we're not going to get another update for a little while. We'll see. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was for damaging winds, Debbie, but there's a lot of things we got to keep watching here. We got to see the evolution of these storms out west before I think they pull the plug on that. But regardless, just make sure you're staying weather aware. I know, and I get caught up in this too. I will say this right now. I'm going to come full screen. I get caught up in this sometimes. The risk, right? The severe weather risk. It's so easy to get caught up in the marginal and the slight and the enhanced, the moderate, high. Folks, I went out and chased a high risk earlier this year, and I didn't see anything out in Oklahoma. When we had those thunderstorms that moved through the area on May 26th, most of the area was under a level 2 or level 3, enhanced and slight risk. And we ended up having one of the historic tornado outbreak in northwest Arkansas and southwest Missouri. So, again, just make sure you're staying weather aware. I don't think this is going to be May 26th. And I think this is one of those severe weather setups that we typically see in the fall, but it could also throw some curveballs. So you got to make sure you've got multiple ways to receive warnings, and make sure you're staying tuned to the latest details with us here at KNWA and Fox 24, because we're going to get you through this. And again, maybe nothing happens, right? And that would be fantastic. Now, I do think it's going to rain no matter what. If it doesn't rain, I don't know if I'm going to be able to show up to work tomorrow, because I know a lot of you won't be happy, and I won't be happy either. I think it's going to rain at the very least. We hope the severe weather potential goes down, but there is that threat, and there are ingredients in place for severe weather. So just make sure you're staying weather aware. We'll get you through that if that severe weather risk starts to materialize. That's the main takeaway from every single severe weather setup, in my opinion. All of our ponds and local farm ponds are dry. Will the rain total help us with that in Garfield, Lacey? I think it's going to help, but I think the system you're really looking for is going to come through over the weekend and the early part of next week. Now, that system, or systems, really, there's still some uncertainty, but we will have to keep an eye on that, because look at the 7-day precipitation forecast from the WPC. Now, this changes a lot. I mean, this changes all the time, but I mean, that's pretty hefty rainfall totals right there, folks. I mean, we're talking 3 to 5 inches at the least for most areas, with locally higher amounts. But again, it's over a 7-day period. Obviously, we're going to get some rain tonight, probably about a half inch to an inch and a half for most spots. Man, if we can get some rain this weekend, that's really going to help. I mean, this kind of rain right here, this kind of rain can really improve your drought situation dramatically. Now, it can also cause flooding. So there's a trade-off, obviously. But if you're looking for rain, it may be in our future as we head towards the weekend and the early part of next week. In fact, if you look at the long-range data, I mean, look at this. This is a 6 to 10-day precipitation outlook. It's still showing wetter than normal conditions, and I agree with that. And that could continue into the middle part of November as well. So a lot of positive trends right now. Again, the atmosphere is a fluid. It eventually is going to correct itself, and it's correcting itself tenfold right now. So just get ready, and we're going to be here watching it very closely, and you're going to be seeing these eye bags going like this, right, as we move through the next few weeks, because there's a lot to talk about and a lot to look at right now. Let's see here. Yeah, you're exactly right about boundaries, Bradley. And sometimes those boundaries don't do anything. I mean, it's crazy. A lot of things that we're watching very closely here. Let's see here. Is the highest risk for tornadoes at the front of the line or during the entire event? So this is a good question, Rachel, because when it comes to QLCS type events, right, it's going to typically be on the leading edge of the line, but not always, right? Now, I think in this storm system, the reason why I would say if we're looking for tornado potential, it's going to be on the leading edge is because you've got a cold front that's crashing in and it's going to try to overrun this area of storms. If it does outrace it, it's going to weaken them considerably. So it's going to be really be out ahead of that cold front, which the most intense thunderstorms will be out ahead of it, obviously. And if the cold front overruns it, this crashing cold front type of setup, then it becomes more of a damaging wind threat. And it is going to be mostly a damaging wind threat this evening. But this is a good question. With this setup, I think it's going to be towards the leading edge of the line. We're going to be looking for those little spin ups, which actually, for as hard as it is to keep an eye on things with QLCS type setups, when it's on the leading edge of the line, it makes it a little bit easier because it's not as backed into the storm. It's not as rain wrapped. So maybe that will help. But again, it's still going to be a very challenging evening. And we got to watch the radar like a hawk. We got to watch the radar like a hawk because these things can go from 0 to 100 really, really quickly. Let's see here. Hey, Josh, what are you going to be for Halloween? My dog, Riley, and Chip got their Halloween costumes ready. Nikita, I'm dressing up as a Gryffindor, a generic Gryffindor from Harry Potter. I've already got my sweater ready. I've already got my glasses. I got my little tie and everything like that. I got my wand too. So I'm gonna be dressing up as a Gryffindor this year from Harry Potter. So last year I dressed up as a cloud. I think what I'm gonna do from now on, like to kind of make it fun when it comes to costumes, because I love dressing up in costumes. I think I'm gonna have 1 year I dress up as weather, and then the next year I dress up as something from pop culture, and then weather, pop culture, just to kind of mix things up. I don't know. I'm trying to map out plans, right? These are the most important plans for for the future. But I cannot wait to see Riley and Chip's costume. Nikita right here, she sends in the best, some of the best dog photos I've ever seen. So I cannot wait to see Riley and Chip. Actually, send in their photo as well, Nikita, so I can feature them on the show tomorrow. It will probably be during the Fox show after the severe weather moves out of the area. So just keep an eye on that. But yeah, we're gonna have a forecast tomorrow. If you guys got some pups in their Halloween costumes. All right, few more questions here. Few more questions. So Brian asked a good question about next week's severe weather threat. I mean, Brian, it looks pretty good for severe weather potential. Now, looks good and it actually happening are two different things. We are still pretty far out. But it does look like next week could bring severe weather potential towards the midsection of the country. Northwest Arkansas and the River Valley could see that as well. The one thing I am a little bit more hesitant on with that system is, we're going to have, if the system moves through, probably quite a bit of rain. Temperatures will be cooler as well. So instability may be lacking. But, it looks impressive. It does look impressive. We'll see what happens. We'll get to there when we get to that point. But, it's a good question. It's a legitimate question because we got to keep a close eye on this. Got to keep a close eye on this. Don't be scared. Be prepared. Best way to rock and roll. Is there any chance of isolated supercells out ahead of the line? There is a chance, Brendan, and we do have to keep a close eye on that. That's what's going to happen out in Kansas and Oklahoma within the next few hours. These little isolated supercells might develop, and those are the ones that could cause big problems, especially out ahead of a line of storms. So there is a chance for isolated supercells. We'll see what happens. How confident are you in future casts that far out? So, and for future tracks in the short term, right, much more confident and stuff like that. But for long-term, long-range future track models, the uncertainty really becomes a big concern, right? So in terms of like a short-term pattern, right, when you're talking about future tracks, a little bit more confident. But here's the deal: models are not perfect, and they're guidance for a reason. They are not the forecast. We've got to ultimately make the forecast and keep an eye on what's going on. So the guidance suggests that these storms are going to pack a punch tonight. Does that come to fruition? Well, that really comes down to what's actually going on in the atmosphere, and that's why we got to take a look at mesoanalysis. That's why we've got to look at the dew points, the temperatures, and stuff like that. And speaking of which, let's look at the temperatures real quick, and then we're going to take one last look at the timing. We're going to take one last look at the risk, and then we're going to wrap this up. Let's look at the temperatures again. So it's already above what the models were talking about. See, Future Track yesterday had a temperature of 77 in Fayetteville, right? But right now it's 79. What role does that play on the severe weather setup this evening? Could be more instability to work with. So that's something to watch very closely. Good question. Very good question right there on that, because it's guidance. It's not going to be perfect. Let's see here. Okay, so let's go over the timing, the risk, and then let's wrap this up right here. We're about 45 minutes in. Thank you guys so much for joining in, by the way, and asking all these great questions. You guys are the best. I love seeing all the questions that everybody has. You guys ask fantastic questions. We got a very knowledgeable group of people as well. I love it. I absolutely love it. I could talk about weather all day with people. So just appreciate everybody asking those questions. Level 2 out of 5 slight risk for all of Northwest Arkansas and the River Valley, except for the far eastern fringes, which is on the level 1 out of 5. Even an enhanced risk seeping into northwestern Delaware County. Main time frame between 8 p.m. tonight through 6 a.m. early tomorrow morning. But I really think the bulk of the activity is going to be after midnight. All modes of severe weather possible. Damaging winds are the main concerns for sure. You can see damaging wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour possible for pretty much the entire weather coverage area. That enhanced risk for Delaware County, by the way, is wind driven. So everybody has pretty much the same tornado threat. And again, the farther west you go, the higher the threat is for tornadoes in this situation. But the greatest tornado threat is off to the north and west of our weather coverage area, as well as large hail up to about quarter to $half size. Large hail is not going to be too big a concern with this storm system. Let's look at the, again, instability is a big factor. We can look at that real quick again. It's a thin plume of instability. It's a thin plume of instability. So we have to watch that, right? If it's a thinner plume of instability, sometimes the storms can struggle to maintain their strength. So we'll watch that very closely. But having said that, again, it is something to keep an eye on right there. We have a lot of spin in the atmosphere. You can see that with the energy elasticity index, and that means the wind shear is quite strong over our weather coverage area, as it typically is this time of year. Fall, you're almost always going to see significant wind shear. It's just how much instability do you have to work with. So here comes the storms on Future Track again, mostly after midnight, but I can't rule out some showers and storms before that. 12 o'clock a.m., it's starting to knock on our doorstep, moving through northwest Arkansas, at least according to this model, right around 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning, shifting into the River Valley at 3 to 4 a.m., into eastern portions of our weather coverage area at 5 a.m. towards Harrison and Jasper, and then finally shifting on to the south and east of the area by the time we get to about, I would say, 6, 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So that's the timing. Here's a look at the precipitation forecast as well. 20 to 30% chance of showers and storms through the evening, and then ramping up as we move throughout the overnight hours tonight. So that's what we're looking at right now, folks. That's about what we've got. Robert has a question about the SPC. Next update will be at around 3 o'clock p.m., Robert. So good question right there, around 3 o'clock p.m. Any chance they expand the risk? There's certainly a possibility. Of course, that those folks there will ultimately make that call. If they do expand the risk, Seth, my prediction is it's not going to be tornado-driven. It will be damaging wind-driven. And the reason why is because typically with the QLCS setup like this, you really don't see it get any higher than that, 5% brown shaded area. You typically see that. The yellow shaded colors are those higher in tornado threats with more isolated supercell development rather than what we're going to see tonight. But again, with QLCS tornadoes, they're still tornadoes. And again, a lot of times the wording with these kind of tornadoes are brief and weak. Yes, they have a tendency to be more brief most of the time, not all the time. I'm not even going to say they have a tendency to be weak because a lot of the QLCS tornadoes that I've seen have been quite strong, actually. Look, the Springdale tornado from a couple of years ago was an EF3. So I never liked using brief and weak. The tornadoes are possible. Yes, those spin ups tend to be more short lived, but we'll have to keep a close eye on these storms as they're moving through the area. Again, no need to panic or anything and stuff like that. There's never a need to panic with any severe weather setup. I just want to stress that as we move throughout the overnight hours tonight, have multiple ways to receive warnings just in case severe weather strikes your area. Weather radio is a great resource to have. The Weather Authority app, a good resource as well. And we'll be right here watching this very closely and keeping you safe. I can promise you that. And again, right here, praying and stuff like that. I believe in that as well, Darkus, and I'm going to be doing that as well this evening, as I do with every single severe weather event that comes to the area. And again, folks, please, if you do believe in the power of prayer and stuff like that, at the very least, keep folks in your thoughts in the Greenwood community this afternoon. Again, if you're just joining, there was a fire this morning in Greenwood that unfortunately impacted a home, and 3 people lost their lives in Greenwood this morning from that fire, including a student, I believe, at Greenwood, who was a football player on the team. I've been seeing a lot of folks talking about that on social media. So just keep those families and the Greenwood community in thoughts and prayers right now. Definitely, I need to send them some love and support after that fire that impacted that home there. But anyway, we're going to be wrapping up this weather live stream right now. Thanks again, everybody, for joining in. Really appreciate you guys with your questions and stuff like that. And we will see you later on this evening with Dan Scoff, Peyton, and potentially Zach Gilday as well. I'll be in early tomorrow morning as these storms are moving through the area as well. God bless everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you later.